You lie still, but the earth beneath you never truly is. Far below your resting form, beneath the quiet soil, beyond the roots of trees and the reach of light, the earth's crust moves, not fast, not with haste. No, this is the pace of continents, of memory held in stone, plate tectonics, the invisible drift of Earth's skin like puzzle pieces sliding slowly on a molten sea. You may not feel it, but every moment, continents shift just a few centimeters each year, like the growth of your fingernails. Africa nudges north. Australia sails toward the equator. The Americas stretch away from Europe like a sigh that began long ago and hasn't yet ended. This movement builds mountains. It pulls apart oceans. It sends tremors beneath your feet and breathes fire into volcanoes. It is why the Himalayas are high, why Iceland steams, why California quakes. It is the earth, adjusting itself, like a sleeper turning in a bed made of time. But imagine now that all of this motion stopped. The plates, these great slabs of crust frozen in place. No more drift, no more collision. The ballet paused mid-turn. At first you might not notice. Days would pass. Seasons would change. The sun would still rise and fall, but beneath the surface, something would begin to shift, or rather, something would begin not to shift. Pressure would build. The Earth's crust, no longer able to release its tension through slow, graceful movement, would begin to strain. Picture a bowstring pulled tighter and tighter, never released. Fault lines, once relieved by gentle motion, would become silent traps, bottling energy that has nowhere to go. Volcanoes starved of fresh movement might slumber for a time, but the molten mantle beneath, restless and alive, would still churn. With no plate movement to guide or relieve it, pressure would find new violent paths to the surface. Eruptions might become rarer, but more catastrophic, sudden, like thunder after long silence, and mountain building, that patient art of colliding continents, would cease. The Himalayas, once pushed higher by India's slow collision into Asia, would begin to erode without resistance. Rain, ice and wind would grind them down. Very slowly, like the passing of dreams, they would shrink. Not within your lifetime, perhaps not even within 1,000, but time would not spare them. The mid-ocean ridges, those deep underwater scars where new crust is born, would go quiet. No more seafloor spreading, no new oceanic crust, and as the crust aged, it would sink and crack, slowly cooling the Earth's inner breath, with no new crust being formed, and no subduction zones to recycle it back into the mantle. Earth's ability to regulate its internal temperature would falter. The cycle creation and consumption would break. Atmospheric CO2, once regulated in part by the uplifting and erosion of mountain chains and volcanic outgassing, might stabilize, or it might spiral. Volcanic release helps warm the planet. Weathering of fresh rock helps cool it. Without tectonics, this careful equilibrium, like a tightrope walker stilled mid-step, could wobble. The climate, no longer stirred by the rise of new land or fresh ocean patterns, might fall into long, still ages. Not necessarily frozen, not necessarily hot but unchanging, stagnant, a sky without surprises, and life. Life would adapt, as it always does. But evolution itself might slow. Much of Earth's richness comes from change-isolated continents, shifting shorelines, new environments. If the stage no longer shifts, the actors would grow comfortable in their roles. The symphony of adaptation might quiet into a long, slow hum. Human life, too, would adjust. Cities near fault zones would grow complacent, then sprawling. With no earthquakes to fear, people might build higher, dig deeper, sleep easier. But the danger would not be gone, only hidden. For though tectonics might pause, the mantle below is not so easily stilled. In time it might punch through. Supervolcanoes could awaken where pressure grows unchecked. The Yellowstone caldera, long watched like a sleeping giant, might finally open its eyes. But perhaps the greatest loss would be invisible. No more mountains rising. No new land birthing itself from the sea. The Earth would stop dreaming forward. Imagine a planet without the slow beauty of becoming. a sculpture unfinished, a canvas put away before the last stroke. Tectonics is Earth's way of reshaping itself, of telling stories in stone. Without it, the stories would fade. Landscapes would settle, rivers would trace the same tired paths, and perhaps you lying there, quiet and listening, would one day walk a world whose bones have forgotten how to move. But even this quiet world would still have its mysteries. Life would continue, under new rhythms. Seeds would still grow, the moon would still pull the tides, and somewhere beneath it all, the heat of the earth would still whisper, waiting for its chance to rise again. Because nothing, truly nothing, ever stops forever. The earth is old, yes, but not finished. And as you drift now towards sleep, imagine again the drifting continents, their slow reunion, the endless cycle of rise and fall, the breath of stone, the pulse beneath silence. Because if one day the dance does stop, what does that mean for the story of Earth's future? You lie still beneath the hush of night, the weight of blankets like layers of time, below your bed, the floor, below the floor, the earth, and far below that, much deeper than mountains, deeper than oceans, there is movement, slow, ancient movement. You picture it now, a vast sea, not of water, but of molten rock. It does not boil or rage. Instead, it rises and falls like breath in the chest of the world. This is convection, not the kind that warms your tea or toasts your bread, but a planetary version, thick and powerful, a slow dance of heat, rising from the deep, cooling at the top, sinking again like a thought that has not yet settled. This cycle, so calm and constant, has been happening beneath your feet for 4 billion years. It is the engine beneath the crust, a gentle, ceaseless push. The warmth that flows upward is not just heat, it is memory. The memory of Earth's birth, of impacts and collisions, of radioactive atoms still whispering their last secrets as they decay. You imagine the mantle now, its rock soft as honey, if you give it time, a place where heat moves like breath, and breath moves mountains. The hottest parts swell upward in plumes, nudging the continents like a hand beneath a sleeping child. The cooler parts drift downwards, labs of crust pulled into the deep, sinking slowly, like tired thoughts at dusk. You see the continents above, unaware passengers, floating on the surface of this great interior tide. They shift, they crack, they wander, but they do not fall. They are held up by the soft strength of something far below. Without convection, there would be no drift, no collision, no mountain, no trench, no tectonics, no life, as you know it. Think of the world's plates now, like puzzle pieces adrift on a warm sea. They bump and slide, gather and pull apart. It feels like chaos from above, but down below, it is rhythm, it is pulse, it is breath. The breath of Earth rises, not in seconds, not in hours, but in centuries and millennia. Each inhale lifts a new ridge from the sea floor. Each exhale returns ancient crust into fire. You may never feel it with your feet, but your world is always breathing, and with that breath comes change. It builds the mountains that scrape the skies. It opens rifts that swallow rivers and forests. It cracks the ice above and stirs the seas beside. Even the air you breathe, rich in oxygen and tempered in carbon, has been shaped by this deep and hidden tide. Now picture a world without this breath. A still earth, a silent one, no rising heat, no sinking crust, just a frozen shell, a planet paused in time. The continents would stop, volcanoes would fade. The winds would grow quieter and the cycle of life, ever so slowly, would begin to close its own circle. But for now, this world still breathes, and in that breath you are cradled. You may not hear the mantle move, but the trees feel it when mountains rise. The oceans feel it when trenches form. And your body, made of ancient minerals born in ancient fire, carries its echo. You are connected, not just to the surface of Earth, but to its deep, slow breath, to the warmth that holds up continents, and to the rhythm that has never stopped. As you lie still, Imagine that breath flowing through you. You are not separate from the Earth's deep tides. You ride upon them, even now. Each cell in your body once belonged to stone, and stone is never truly still. Even in your quietest sleep, you are part of the world's ancient motion, and so, with the crust still drifting above a restless heart, you drift too, slowly, toward the next question: what happens when that breath changes direction? You lie back in the dark, and the earth moves quietly beneath you. Though you cannot feel it, it drifts and breathes. The crust you sleep upon is not solid, not still. It is broken into great, slow-dancing plates. Like lily pads on a pond, they glide upon molten rock, an ancient ballet of continents and ocean floors. They pull apart and push together. They rise into mountains, fall into trenches, and whisper the story of a restless planet. These tectonic plates, vast and patient, carry entire lands on their backs. India once journeyed north and crashed into Asia, rising into the snow-laced spine of the Himalayas. South America's edge curls like a leaf as the Pacific plate sinks beneath it. These movements, slow as centuries, build landscapes, birth volcanoes, and feed oceans. But tonight, just for a moment, let's imagine a stillness. Let's imagine the plates, all of them simply stop. The grinding halts, the collisions freeze, the silent drift ends. No more earthquakes, no more volcanoes, no new land, no swallowed seafloor. At first, the quiet might seem comforting, but listen longer. Without the motion, Earth forgets how to breathe. Deep beneath your feet, heat builds trapped like a sigh behind closed lips. The mantle can no longer vent its pressure. Magma still churns, but now it has nowhere to go. Volcanoes, which once relieved the inner tension, stand sealed like ancient scars, and beneath them, pressure swells in silence. The continents, no longer shifting, begin to grow brittle. The crust, once flexible through movement, stiffens. Like a muscle never stretched, it tightens. And where pressure once found release in slow earthquakes, now it waits, coiled and unrelenting. Mountain ranges stop rising. Weather begins to eat away at them slowly, but with no new peaks forming, the world's great heights begin to shrink. Meanwhile, the oceans feel the stillness too. Subduction, the sinking of oceanic plates, is part of a great recycling. Old seafloor is pulled down, melted, and reborn as new crust. Without it, the oceans begin to pile up with aging, heavy floors. The mid-ocean ridges long, volcanic seams in the sea fall dormant. No new seafloor emerges, no hot springs bubble, no fresh minerals drift into deep ocean ecosystems. The life that thrives around these vents, creatures that bloom in the dark without sun, without surface, slowly fades. Even the atmosphere listens. Carbon dioxide, once pulled into Earth's interior through subducted rocks, now lingers longer in the sky. Volcanoes that once balanced carbon no longer breathe it out or in, and so ever so gently, the climate begins to change. More heat, more storms. But the ground beneath remains eerily still. You might think that humans would feel safer without earthquakes or volcanic eruptions. But over time, the cost of stillness would rise. Rivers, with no new mountains to descend from, lose their carving power. Coasts no longer shift with the uplift of land, and erosion becomes a one-way path to flatness. The world grows quieter, older, and strangely worn. It is like a song that once played softly in the background, now silenced, and you begin to notice its absence. Life adjusts. It always does. But so much of what shaped evolution was born from tectonic drama. Isolated islands, splitting continents, changing climates sparked by shifting land. Without it, the pace of change slows. Ecosystems settle, diversity steadies, perhaps even declines. The engine of change has cooled. Even you would notice. Eventually, the minerals we rely on, copper, rare earths, diamonds, all are gifts of tectonic motion. Without it, they remain locked away, or never form at all. Energy sources shift, landscapes flatten, Coastal cities lose the natural rise that once protected them. Tsunamis may become rarer, but sea levels creep forward without the earth to lift the land. Time stretches, stillness reigns, and yet beneath this frozen world, the mantle still pulses. The inner core still spins. The earth has not died, but only paused. How long could this pause last? 1,000 years? 1,000,000? And if the plates ever move again, will they crack with fury, or resume their slow, forgiving rhythm? It is not a question of if, but when. Because this planet is not made for stillness. It lives through motion, through the slow grinding of stone on stone, through the poetry of upheaval, through the rise of mountain and fall of sea. And so as you lie quietly in your bed, the ground beneath you stirs, ever so slowly. You may not hear it. You may not feel it. But the planet is humming, whispering its song of movement and change. A lullaby, written in shifting crust and molten fire. And as that thought lingers, as the vision of a still earth dissolves, you begin to wonder what else lies beneath us, unseen and unresolved. You stand at the foot of the Himalayas, their snowy crowns piercing the stars, their silence ancient and knowing. You feel the earth breathing beneath you, slow and deep, a pulse of motion older than any heartbeat. But tonight, that breath pauses, the motion stills, and you are left in a world where tectonic plates have ceased their endless drift. The ground beneath your feet is no longer a living canvas of change. It is frozen not in temperature, but in purpose. The mighty engines that pushed continents together and tore oceans apart have gone quiet. The subterranean ballet has ended, and the curtains fall gently on the stage of uplift. You look up again at the Himalayas, knowing they were born from a collision, India rising into Asia like a ship into ice. Millions of years of slow violence sculpted these peaks, and now with tectonics asleep, that growth stops. No more heaving of crust, no more upward push. The mountains are left to the mercy of wind and rain, of frost and sun. They begin to age. In this world, erosion becomes the sculptor's only tool. You see it, slow rivers carving away at stone that no longer renews itself. Frost pries at crevices, roots curl through cracks. The mighty peaks begin to shrink, imperceptibly at first, then more boldly. Their jagged edges soften, their snowcaps retreat. You walk through the Andes now, past silent volcanoes whose fires have dimmed. Their roots, fed by the subducting Nazca plate, no longer rise, for subduction has ceased. The crusts press no longer, and magma sleeps beneath solid stone. What once erupted in fire now cools in stillness. The volcanoes, once proud with smoke and flame, begin to crumble inward, returning grain by grain to the earth. Further west, the Alps cradle you in their arms of folded rock. These were once seabeds, crumpled skyward by ancient compressions. Without movement, the folds grow faint. The mountains seem tired, their shoulders no longer lifted by the pressures below. You press your hand to a cold stone and feel the memory of warmth, of movement, of building. But that memory is fading. Without tectonic motion, mountain building or orogeny becomes a chapter closed. The Earth's wrinkles smooth out over geologic time. The planet begins to look older, flatter, less restless. But it's not just what rises that changes, it's also what lies beneath. The mantle, still hot, still churning in secret currents, loses its connection to the crust above. Without plate movement to release pressure, heat builds slowly. The planet begins to sweat beneath its surface, but no vents remain, no volcanic sighs, no mid-ocean ridges splitting to release its breath. The Earth begins to stew, and in the shallows where plates once met in coastal trenches and ridges, silence reigns. Earthquakes no longer roll through fault lines. There is no grinding, no cracking. The crust forgets how to break. At first it feels like peace, a world without tremors. But beneath that calm lies a strange tension. For a world without quakes is a world without change, without pressure being relieved. Stresses build in secret, silent pockets. The ecosystems that thrived along tectonic boundaries, deep sea vents, hydrothermal fields, begin to vanish. You dive deep beneath the ocean, and where once there were gardens of alien life glowing near volcanic fissures, you now find emptiness. The chimneys have cooled, the vents have sealed, the dance of heat and life has ended. Even the sky feels it. Mountains helped stir the wind. Their heights shaped weather, caught clouds, cast shadows that painted climates across the globe. With their decline, the atmosphere changes its rhythm. Rain falls where it didn't. Winds shift. Ecosystems finely tuned to altitude and terrain begin to falter. Trees adapted to alpine heights lose their niche. Birds that rode mountain thermals drift lower, uncertain. Snow lines recede. Glaciers weep into rivers, and the rivers, without uplift to renew their slopes, begin to meander and flatten. You wander now through valleys that once were young, carved by the thrust of rising stone. They feel older now, as if they remember a song the earth no longer sings. And you begin to wonder, what did the mountains know? They knew movement. They knew struggle and grace. They knew how to rise through pressure. Their silence was not stillness, but strength. In their slow uplift was a lesson about resilience, about beauty forged in tension. Without them reaching, something inside you feels suspended, as if the world has lost its upward gaze. You lie down in a meadow once formed by glacial retreat, cradled by low hills that were once ambitious peaks. The stars above shine no differently, but you notice how quiet the earth has become, not in sound, but in story. The story of growth, of upheaval, of relentless motion paused. And yet, you feel that beneath the stillness, something waits. Perhaps not all stories end when movement stops. Some shift, some deepen. Perhaps the earth is dreaming, storing its energy for a future rhythm. Perhaps this is not the death of change, but its hibernation, because even in stillness, there is listening. Even in silence, there is memory. And maybe, just maybe, the earth, though unmoving, still carries the longing to rise. You lie down and close your eyes. The world is quiet now, but somewhere deep beneath your feet, the earth is always shifting slowly, steadily, patiently. Not all movement is noisy. Not all power is loud. The continents themselves drift like massive rafts on an ancient sea of rock. You do not feel them, but they never sleep. This quiet dance is called plate tectonics, and it has been shaping Earth for over 3 billion years. Tonight, you'll imagine a world where that dance stops. Breathe in slowly. Let the air sink into your chest. Now exhale. Let the stillness begin. Picture the surface of the Earth as a great jigsaw puzzle. Each piece is a plate, some as large as oceans, others no bigger than islands. These plates ride atop the mantle, that slow churning sea of molten rock below. The mantle flows. The plates drift, and where they touch, that's where the story begins. Mountains rise like folded blankets, where plates collide. Ocean trenches stretch deep as secrets where they pull apart. Earthquakes shiver where they scrape. Volcanoes bloom like fire lilies where molten rock finds a seam. Now imagine all of this stops. One morning the plates no longer move. The earth beneath becomes perfectly still. At first it might feel peaceful. No more earthquakes to fear. No more volcanoes rumbling. The ground becomes reliable, predictable. Children play on unmoving soil. Cities sleep without worry. But slowly, ever so slowly, the stillness begins to whisper its cost. Without plate motion, mountains no longer rise. The Himalayas, ever growing, would begin to erode. Winds and rains would wear them down, grain by grain. In 1,000,000 years their jagged peaks would soften, and in 10 million, they might disappear altogether. Even the continents themselves would begin to fade. Not vanish, but flatten. No new land pushed upward, no old land renewed. The breathing of the earth would still, and beneath the crust, the mantle would cool. You see, the movement of plates helps vent the planet's heat. It's like a simmering pot with the lid slightly ajar. But seal that lid, and pressure builds. Without plate tectonics, volcanoes grow silent. But their silence hides a deeper truth. They're part of Earth's thermostat. They release carbon dioxide and other gases into the air, which in turn help trap warmth and feed plants. Without them, the atmosphere slowly loses its balance. Imagine forests that cannot breathe. Imagine rains that do not fall. Without volcanic recycling, carbon gets locked in stone, and the world begins to chill. Glaciers creep farther with each passing century. Snow blankets the lands that once grew crops. Oceans become sluggish, their currents confused by the cold. Life must adapt or retreat. You see, plate tectonics is more than motion. It's Earth's heartbeat, slow, strong, and essential. And now, with its pulse halted, the planet begins to drift toward another fate. Underneath the still crust, the mantle continues its slow churning. But without a way to release heat, the temperature rises deep below. Pressure builds in silence, unnoticed for eons. Until one day, not in 100 years, or 1,000, but perhaps in 1,000,000, the crust can hold no more. And then, without warning, the still earth cracks. Not in the tremble of a single quake, but in a planetary sigh, a release long denied. Yet even before that distant rupture, human life would feel the stillness. Our cities depend on the land, its resources, its rhythms. Minerals come from mountain building. Fertile soils form from volcanic ash. Without new rock, we mine the same deposits over and over, until they're gone. Farms struggle, forests change, weather patterns drift out of sync. Oceans cool, then stagnate, and species vanish, not from fire or flood, but from a world that has fallen too still. Tectonics is not just about chaos, it's about renewal. Destruction, yes, but with it, rebirth. A volcano buries, but it also enriches. An earthquake shatters, but also reshapes. And in that reshaping, life finds a way to grow again. You feel your breath now slow, deep, and easy. Imagine that breath is the Earth's, rising with new mountains, falling with the weight of eroding stone. Tectonics is that breath, and without it, the Earth holds still, too still. In this imagined silence, the world becomes fragile. Not suddenly, not with drama, but with the slow wear of time unhealed. So the next time you feel the ground quiver beneath you, or see the smoke of a distant volcano, you might remember this planet lives, because it moves, and it moves, because it must. Now you drift, slowly like a continent on its ancient journey. You are a passenger on a restless Earth, an Earth that breathes, grows, and dreams through its shifting crust. But even as you float through this still, imagined world, another question begins to stir, like heat beneath the surface. If tectonics shapes the land beneath your feet, then what shapes the magnetic field above your head? What invisible forces ripple through the sky, just as powerful and just as vital? Let us rise now gently, and drift toward that magnetic mystery. You lie still beneath a vast night sky, where the stars shimmer with quiet intent. The air is calm, yet something inside the earth once pulsed, something fiery, relentless, and alive. Beneath the ground you rest upon, there once churned an ocean of molten rock, a restless sea of magma pressing upward, always seeking escape. Volcanoes, they were the breath of the planet's way of releasing pressure, of speaking through fire. You can still imagine it, can't you? A mountain trembling from within, the ground cracking open like a whisper becoming a scream, and then eruption, flame, ash, and life. Yes, life, because from this violence came renewal. The lava once cooled, formed new islands and enriched soils. Volcanic ash carried nutrients that fed forests, plains, and oceans. Volcanoes were not just destroyers, they were creators, and they were deeply tied to something older, deeper, the slow grinding of tectonic plates beneath your feet. The plates shifted, one dove beneath another, the crust stretched, crumpled, broke. And in those moments of tectonic drama, magma found its path. Without that motion, that dance of crust and mantle, the pathways closed. Like a clogged artery in a slumbering heart, pressure built without release. Now, imagine a world where that motion stops. The plates no longer move, no longer slide, collide, or tear apart. Beneath the crust, heat still lingers strapped, but the conduits are gone. The vents are sealed. The magma settles into silence. Volcanoes no longer breathe. At first it's quiet, almost peaceful. No more eruptions, no more ash clouds blocking the sun, no rivers of lava threatening villages. But this peace is a fragile illusion, like the hush before a storm that never arrives. You notice the change over time. The soil begins to thin, crops grow weaker. The minerals once replenished by ash are missing. The cycle of renewal is broken. You walk through forests that were once lush and wild. Now they seem tired, like they are waiting for something that never comes. Beneath your feet, the planet is cooling, slowly, steadily. The core still burns, but the surface grows cold. Without tectonic motion, there's no convection to carry heat upward. The mantle stiffens. The earth, once alive with motion, is falling asleep, and with this stillness, something more delicate begins to unravel. Carbon. Normally it cycles through the earth, into the atmosphere through eruptions, drawn back down through weathering and subduction. It's a balance, a breath in and out. But now, the breath has stopped. Volcanic carbon emissions cease. Over centuries, carbon in the atmosphere declines, temperatures fall, the skies grow clearer, colder, quieter. Ice returns. Glaciers, once retreating, begin to creep forward. They take the valleys first, then the hills. Eventually they touch the edges of cities. The world becomes pale, wrapped in white. Not in panic, but in silence. You wonder, what did volcanoes truly give us? They were heat in a cooling world, islands in rising seas, even extinction and rebirth. They reshaped continents, built mountains, and gave rise to fertile cradles of civilization. Their destruction was always double-sided within the flame, a seed. But now that flame is gone, and so the seed waits. Some life retreats. Extremophiles, those tiny creatures that thrived in the heat of hydrothermal vents, begin to fade. Their homes cracks at the bottom of the sea, where lava once seeped now lie cold and dark. No heat, no chemistry, no spark. And deep down life diminishes. On the surface, ecosystems adapt, but uneasily. Species that once depended on volcanic nutrients struggle to compete. Coral reefs, already weakened, bleach and crumble without the minerals that once flowed from volcanic rivers. Fish disappear, forests thin. You sit beneath a tree and feel it, this stillness, this longing in the land. In ancient times, myths told of volcanoes as gods, as giants, as dragons, sleeping beneath the earth. The old stories knew there was something divine in the fire, a heartbeat, a warning, a promise. Now in this frozen age, it feels as though the gods have left. The dragons have fallen silent. Still the core burns. You imagine yourself diving deep, past the crust, through the brittle lithosphere, into the slow convecting mantle, where heat still churns in ghostly spirals. It wants to rise. It wants to breathe. But the lid is too strong, unmoving. The pressure builds, not enough to explode. Not yet, but enough to dream of movement. And that dream whispers of possibility. Because maybe this isn't the end. Maybe the earth is not dead, only resting, waiting, like a forest beneath snow, where seeds sleep until spring. Maybe the fire will rise again one day, far ahead, and if it does, what will awaken with it? You begin by sinking slowly through a world of blue that thickens around you like velvet. Light from above filters down in trembling ribbons. The surface world fades, its rush and roar replaced by a hush as deep as thought itself. You drift farther, until your feet find the ocean floor, a vast, silent plain of dark stone and scattered life, older than memory. Beneath this quiet, something ancient once pulsed. You feel it not as sound, but as absence. The mid-ocean ridges, those long underwater mountain chains, once breathed heat and new rock into the world. Magma welled up through cracks, spreading the seafloor outward like the slow opening of a flower. It was gentle, but unstoppable. The plates slid apart, and from between them rose the very crust of the earth, born again. But now imagine it has stopped. No more molten whispers, no more quiet expansion. The seafloor lies still. At first you might not notice. The change is deep and slow, almost invisible. But time passes, years, centuries, and the silence grows heavy. Without new crust pushing outward from the ridges, there is no force driving the plates across the globe. Subduction slows, then halts. The great recycling system of Earth's outer skin, its moving puzzle of plates, freezes. The ocean basins begin to age. They deepen like forgotten bowls holding more and more water. The floors that were once renewed with fresh basalt begin to sag under their own ancient weight. Sediments thicken, and cold creeps ever deeper. You walk across this quiet plain. Beneath your feet, there are no cracks, no new birth, only the weight of time. You can feel the oceans themselves adjusting slowly, reluctantly. With no new seafloor being created, the chemistry of the water begins to shift. Normally, spreading ridges release minerals into the sea, a subtle seasoning of salts, metals, and gases. Without it, the balance tips, salinity drifts. Life begins to feel the difference. Tiny plankton, the drifters who build the base of the ocean's food web, sense the change first. Their shells form differently. Their blooms grow uneven, scattered. The great oceanic conveyor, that deep and looping current that moves heat and life across the planet, stumbles in its rhythm. Cold water pools where it shouldn't. Warm water lingers too long, and life listens. Coral reefs begin to dim and withdraw. Fish wander unfamiliar paths. Whale songs stretch longer, slower, searching across altered seas. You float alongside them, listening to their mourning. The oceans are dreaming, but without their tectonic breath, their dreams turn restless. Back on the ocean floor, you see strange transformations. Hydrothermal vents, those glowing chimneys of heat and minerals, once clustered near spreading ridges, have gone cold. No more boiling plumes, no more alien gardens of tube worms and blind shrimp thriving in their dark warmth. Those creatures vanish, like myths. You remember how it was, heat rising from deep below, minerals carried upward in shimmering towers of water, life feeding on the chemical magic of Earth's core. Now the vents are tombs, mineral husks where lightless life once bloomed. You keep walking. Even the sound of the ocean has changed. The low grumble of distant quakes has faded. With no plates moving, no friction builds, no sudden slips release the Earth's deep tension. The silence is complete. It's beautiful, in a way, but unsettling, like holding your breath too long. The continents, too, are no longer traveling. Without the slow shove of new oceanic crust, they no longer drift like islands of stone upon a flowing sea. Mountains erode, but are not remade. Coastlines harden. The edges of the world become brittle. You trace a finger across the map of memory. Once this land and that were joined, Pangaea, Gondwana, Laurasia, and then they drifted apart, together, again and again, but now the dance has stopped. The music, composed deep in the Earth's molten heart, is gone. What happens to a world that can no longer move? The question hums through the still water. Without tectonic motion, carbon cycles falter, volcanoes cease. The Earth exhales less carbon dioxide, weathering slows, atmospheres shift. The air becomes cooler, glaciers inch forward, reclaiming land. The climate remembers how to freeze. You surface briefly just to breathe, just to glimpse the frozen breath of the world. Snow falls where once there was rain. Deserts contract. Forests shrink. The oceans, ever the patient mirrors of the sky, darken further. And yet, life persists. It always does. But this life is quieter, more cautious. It adapts in silence, like moss in a cave. You swim alongside ancient creatures that haven't changed in eons, coelacanths, jellyfish, sharks drifting through this colder, stiller sea. What stories would the oceans tell now, if they could speak? Would they remember the heat that once pulsed beneath their floor? the rise of ridges, the fall of trenches, the swirl of currents born from rock and time? Or would they speak only of stillness? Perhaps in their dreams they imagine motion again. Imagine the crust pulling, splitting, birthing new land beneath the waves. Imagine the taste of iron and sulfur blooming from vents reborn. Imagine the slow, certain breath of a planet alive and turning from within. And as you listen to these dreams, drifting on the edge of this quiet ocean, you begin to wonder. You lie still, eyes gently closed, as the world beneath you hums. You may not feel it, but the ground is never still. Great plates of earth drift slowly, silently, across a sea of molten rock. They slide, crash, dive, and in doing so, they breathe, not in air, but in carbon. They draw it in, and they let it go. You are held on the skin of a breathing planet. This carbon breath is ancient, older than trees, older than bones, older than thought. For eons, tectonic plates have pulled bits of carbon down into the Earth's mantle, locking it in rock, folding it into mountains, burying it beneath oceans, and just as quietly, volcanoes have exhaled it again, sending wisps of it skyward, letting it drift through the air, where plants drink it in, and life begins anew. You are part of this cycle too. Each breath you take contains the echo of volcanoes past of carbon that once hid in the belly of the earth. But now we wonder, what if the plates stopped? What if the dance ended? Imagine it. No more subduction zones pulling ocean crust under continents. No more mountain chains pushed skyward by colliding slabs. No more molten rock creeping up through cracks to spill light and heat and carbon into the air. The cycle would pause. The breath would catch. Without tectonic movement, carbon would no longer be pulled into the deep earth. Rain would still fall, wind would still erode rock, and rivers would still carry tiny bits of carbon into the sea. But without subduction, these bits would build up endlessly unburied, unbalanced, unmoving, and volcanoes, those ancient lungs of the earth, would go quiet. No more eruptions, no more gas released from deep within. Carbon would stay locked away in sediments and shells, never to return. The balance would shift. For now, Earth holds carbon in a delicate equilibrium. When too much builds in the sky, weathering and subduction draw it down. When too little drifts above, volcanoes bring it back. It's a thermostat, older than any machine, a quiet conversation between rock and sky. But in a world where plates no longer shift, this conversation ends. At first you might not notice. The air would feel the same. The trees would sway in the same breeze. The oceans would continue to murmur against the shore. But slowly, steadily, the planet would begin to cool. With no new carbon entering the atmosphere, the planet's blanket, thin, invisible, and vital, would begin to thin. Greenhouse gases, once replenished by eruptions, would slip away with time. Rain would wash carbon from the sky, rivers would bury it in the sea, and nothing would rise to take its place. Temperatures would fall, seasons would stretch longer and colder, glaciers would grow, inch by quiet inch, reclaiming land that once belonged to forests and fields. Snow might linger where it once melted. Ice would edge closer to the equator, a slow migration of stillness. It could take millions of years, or less, but the direction would be certain. Life, always adaptive, would change with it. Creatures would move, evolve, vanish. Forests would shrink, deserts would cool. Coral reefs, those shimmering cities beneath the waves, might vanish altogether, their delicate balance disrupted by the cooling seas and shifting chemistries. And yet some life might thrive. In the deep ocean, in quiet lakes, in burrows beneath the soil, creatures would endure. The earth is a survivor, even in silence. But the question remains, is it still the earth you know, if it no longer breathes? The story of climate is not just about temperature, it's about movement, exchange, a hidden dialogue between stone and sky, and when tectonics end, that dialogue fades. The earth becomes quieter, colder and more still, not just in its crust, but in its soul. And you lying there, listening to this quiet world, might feel something missing. Not a sound or a scent, but a rhythm. A breath you didn't know you depended on. This isn't just geology, it's memory. Every tree, every ocean breeze, every breath of yours owes something to the plates below. And now you imagine them frozen. A map without motion, continents locked forever in place. No more supercontinents forming and breaking apart. No more earthquakes, no more uplift, just stillness. A stillness that looks peaceful but hides a fading pulse. The earth for now still breathes, still exchanges, still whispers carbon stories between fire and sky. But should the plates ever pause for good, that story would slowly come to an end, not with a bang, but with a long exhaling silence. You rest in that thought, suspended in the middle of a grand planetary inhale. And as the silence deepens, you begin to wonder, if motion fades and balance slips, what else might the earth forget to do? What else might pause when its heartbeat stills? You open your eyes beneath a sky that hasn't changed in years. There are no quakes to rattle your bones, no distant murmurs of lava shifting beneath your feet. The earth has gone silent, not asleep, but unnaturally still. A world without plate tectonics, without the restless churning of its deep interior. At first, it feels like peace. Cities stand taller now. Skyscrapers are built with less fear. The ground, once an unpredictable canvas, now offers permanence. You step outside, and the earth doesn't tremble. You climb a hill, and there is no sense of ancient forces below, no pull of hidden magma, no whispered warning through the stones. But then you notice the air. It tastes different, thinner. The oxygen you breathe is not as rich, not as replenished. You look to the forests, green still, but less vibrant. Some trees are beginning to yellow around the edges, not from drought, but from time. Their roots cling to soil, no longer refreshed by volcanic ash, no longer enriched by minerals from deep below. Tectonics, it turns out, were the breath of the earth, not just its fury, without subduction, without new crust forming. At the mid-ocean ridges and old crust sinking into the mantle, there is no recycling. The land grows old, mountains erode, but no new ones rise. The Himalayas begin to sag a slow, graceful bow to gravity, and no fresh peaks take their place. The continents, once like puzzle pieces slowly drifting on a lava sea, now sit locked in place. The oceans sigh against their edges, uncertain where to go. Rainfall patterns twist, jet streams shift. The planet's skin cools in some places and heats in others, unpredictably. Storms grow curious. The absence of volcanic aerosols, tiny particles once injected into the atmosphere that gently cooled the earth, changes the balance. Some places warm, others dry. The monsoons you once knew no longer arrive on time, or at all. Deep below the surface, the Earth's core still spins, but its dance has lost its partner. The mantle above it no longer convects. Without that motion, the geodynamo, that swirling system that powers Earth's magnetic field, weakens. You watch as the auroras begin to fade. The colors at the poles, once bright ribbons of charged particles caught in Earth's magnetic net, lose their shimmer. And then, one night, they're simply gone. Satellites begin to suffer. Cosmic radiation slips through a thinner magnetic shield. Compasses spin with less certainty. Migratory birds hesitate. They still try to follow the invisible lines across the globe, but those lines are fading. And yet, life continues. You walk through the ruins of what used to be an active geothermal field. The steam vents are silent now. Pools once boiling with heat are still and crusted with salt. The vibrant colors, those yellows and reds painted by thermophilic bacteria, have dulled. Without heat, their tiny ancient lives have ended. But you spot something new: delicate moss, growing in shaded cracks. A quiet resilience. Life always reaching, always adjusting. Still there is a price. Coral reefs, which once relied on a steady balance of temperature and mineral-rich waters, are bleaching faster now. The oceans have stopped receiving the gift of underwater volcanism. No more new islands, no fresh nutrients. Coastal ecosystems falter. Fish migrate without pattern. And in the cold, deep sea, the creatures of the hydrothermal vents, those blind, alien-looking beings who lived off Earth's inner fire, are gone. Their chimneys have cooled. Their world has ended. You sit by a cliff, watching as gulls soar over a sea growing more acidic, less forgiving. Above you, clouds gather, but they don't move with confidence. The winds that once shaped them were guided in part by the placement of mountain ranges, the breath of the land. Now the weather is a drifting dream, moody, uncertain, slowed, and still. You wonder, wasn't this what we wished for? A calm earth, a still earth, one that doesn't shake our homes or bury cities beneath ash, one that doesn't roar in the night or boil from within. But in stillness there is loss, the loss of rhythm, of cycling, of growth born from destruction. Because tectonics were never just violent, they were also nourishing. They sculpted the world, lifted continents, birthed the air you breathe. They stitched together the long history of life with heat and movement. You begin to feel a quiet ache for the old chaos, not for the danger, but for the motion, for the volcanoes that gave islands their shape, for the earthquakes that reminded you the earth is alive, for the plates that drifted, collided, parted, and in doing so, wrote every chapter of this planet's deep time story. Without motion, the earth is a photograph, a moment, frozen. It may last longer this way, less risk, fewer surprises, but is longevity worth stasis? The sun begins to set. A copper hue spills across the still mountains. You close your eyes and imagine what lies beneath them. Still warm, still molten, still dreaming. And maybe, just maybe, the earth is not finished yet. Maybe this stillness is not an ending, but a pause, a breath, before the next shift, before the next world begins to shape itself again. You lie down, not just in your bed, but into the slow breath of the earth. The pillow beneath your head holds not only dreams, but the long folded stories of rock-soft sediments pressed by time. And under that, deeper still, the plates, titanic, invisible, ancient, always in motion, until tonight. Close your eyes. Imagine it. The moment the earth holds its breath, tectonic plates, those drifting islands of crust suddenly stop. No grinding, no sliding, no uplift, only stillness. You feel it not as silence, but as the absence of rhythm, the low thrum of continents gone. And yet, the memory of their dance lingers in your bones, because you are built from this movement. Calcium in your teeth came from ancient seas raised into mountains by colliding lands. Iron in your blood comes from the furnace below, drawn upward through fractures in the crust, long before humans stood on 2 feet. Now in this story, the fractures rest. No volcanoes rumble, no mountain rises or erodes, no great trench yawns wider. Even the slow pull of continents that once drifted like massive floating puzzle pieces comes to a pause. And what happens when motion stops? At first, nothing. The sky looks the same. Rivers continue their winding paths. Clouds drift, unbothered. But slowly, imperceptibly, the changes begin. Because Earth is not just surface and weather, it is breath and pressure and heat. Without plate motion, the great conveyor of heat within the mantle slows. Pressure builds deep below, trapped, restless. Volcanoes become corked bottles. The planet's inner warmth looks for a new way out. You are still lying there, but your thoughts dive downward, past the roots of trees, past the granite bones of continents, down into the mantle, that slow churning ocean of stone. It has no voice, but it speaks in temperature. And without plate tectonics to release it, the planet becomes just a bit warmer, a simmering that will take centuries to feel, but begins now, in this moment of stillness. You wonder, what about the mountains, those ancient cathedrals of stone, pushed skyward by colliding plates? Without motion, they no longer grow. Instead, they yield, softened by rain, whittled by wind, lowered inch by inch until they are folded back into the landscape. Time, without tectonics, becomes erosion's quiet friend. There is something gentle in that idea, that even the tallest peaks choose eventually to lay down their crowns. You shift slightly under your blanket, and in that motion, recall that fault lines no longer tremble. No earthquakes roll through city streets, no sudden fractures, no alarms. The world above breathes easier, but deep below, tension collects like water behind a dam. Not today, but someday, the stillness may break all at once, an ancient pressure, long denied, released in one furious breath. For now, though, only quiet. Even life notices. Ocean currents, once driven subtly by the placement of continents, start to drift, just a little. But with each passing decade, the sea stirs differently, weather shifts, rain falls where it once never did, droughts find new homes. The butterfly flaps its wings in a world whose wings have stilled, and still the earth spins. Rotation has nothing to do with tectonics. The sun still rises, the moon still pulls at tides, but without the ever-adjusting map of the seafloor, carbon cannot hide so easily in the crust. The great recycling slows. Volcanic ash no longer feeds the air with cooling dust. The atmosphere begins to notice. You might not feel it in your lifetime, but Earth is not built for complete stillness. Its balance is motion. You breathe in, your chest rises like a mountain forming. You breathe out, and something in you erodes, softens, returns to sea, because you too are part of this rhythm. Your heartbeat, your pulse, your breath, they echo Earth's hidden tides. You are made of stardust, yes, but you are shaped by pressure, just like the land beneath you. Imagine if all pressure paused. What would rise in its place? Reflection, maybe. Stillness, not as emptiness, but as a mirror. Without tectonics, Earth becomes a planet of memory. It holds its mountains in photographs, its volcanoes in myths, its continents in stories, not motion. A museum of geological time, frozen at a single tick of the clock. And yet, as you drift now into sleep, know that even in imagined stillness, the earth remains alive. Its heat still pulses beneath its crust, its minerals still whisper to roots and rain, and its silence is never final, only a pause in a longer song. You are lying in a bed that rests on a continent that was once a drifting raft of stone. It may drift again, but tonight it pauses with you. A deep inhale, the world waits, and in that breathless pause, you begin to dream of the next motion, not of plates or faults, but of something else quietly unfolding beneath you.